I'd love to welcome Claire Harvey. Claire is the chair of the UK 5G Creative Industries Working Group and is also a superstar over at Red Bee. So, Claire, I've taken you through those sort of initial thoughts about 5G, what it is, what it could potentially do. But from your point of view, talk to us about some of the things that you're seeing.
Okay, apologies everyone for the senior moment there on the mic. And thank you, Geoff, for having me here and Broadcast Tech Fest as well. Just a little bit about it. I sit on the board of UK 5G. We are a cross-sector group advising and working with DCMS on the take-up of 5G across all sorts of sectors, not just media and broadcast. We're working with agriculture, automotive, manufacturing, health, and so on. And as chair of the working group, I'm working with Geoff and with Matt, also with representatives from the BBC, from National Gallery and Epic Games. And we are together working out how 5G affects us and also how we can help others to understand and start to think about how they could use it as well. Within Red Bee Media, I work with some of our companies and our clients in the UK and Ireland. And we're also thinking about how we can work with 5G to across our value chain, all the way from acquisition through to distribution and the operation behind it. And I think there are some exciting and real case studies that COVID have had an acceleration in a way that we would have seen a year ago. So the big story as we were sitting here last year was about remote production, and I think thanks to COVID, we've seen remote production adopted perhaps far faster than we might have done hitherto.
I think that might be the understatement of the year, Claire. Very quick take up of remote, not just obviously for production and infrastructure, but for events too. Okay, so Claire, we're going to come back to you and have a big discussion, but we also have here Matt Stagg. Matt is responsible for developing the broadcaster's mobile capabilities and long-term mobile strategy, recently leading the team that delivered the award-winning world's first remotely produced live sporting event over 5G. So there you go, Claire. He is also currently developing the strategy and roadmap for augmented and mixed reality at BT Sport. So Matt, it's fantastic having you with us today. Talk to us a little bit more about some of the 5G kind of opportunities and what you've been up to of late.
Yes, thank you, and thanks for having me here. So it's a really exciting time for the broadcast industry. Well, I'll be honest, none of the the vertical industries, as we sort of put them across, say, automotive, broadcast, agriculture, were involved in anything to do with 4G. It was a faster version of 3G, became a video distribution because of timing and things that came out. But 5G has had that discussion. So as broadcasters, we've had a voice in what we require. So there's I guess there's two pieces to what I look at. One being the contribution, so opportunities of capturing content and getting it to the studio or the OB, and then the other side is how we use 5G to bring more engagement to fans. How we can take the fan to the stadium, which is especially important now using augmented reality, and within the stadium, how we can take some of the power that we have as a broadcaster to increase the engagement that you get at stadium. So one of the big things I guess that I'll look at first is why remote production. We've spoke about remote production in many formats. Why would you want to do it? There's lots of good reasons. You can not sending a huge OB, and for anyone who's not a broadcaster, OB is where you have all of the people and the technology to produce a program. So vision mixers, sound mixers, directors in there, etc. And that all comes in a big truck, and that's normally parked in a compound and connected. But it's all static cameras. So if you don't have to have one of these OBs, you can do lots more concurrent. Having a 5G camera doing remote production gives you unlimited creative opportunities. You can go anywhere, literally. And work-life balance, very good for our people. They don't have to go away. They don't have to be up and down, staying away. In fact, when we were discussing this at IBC last year, one of our directors, Gemma, said when she was asked what's the best thing about remote production, she said, I can have breakfast with my young son every day, which is great. And then the environmental things. We don't want to be sending trucks, cars, hotels for our people. So, you know, that's one of the key pieces that we're looking at, why we would want to use 5G.
Great. Hey, listen, thank you so much for both of your intros. I feel very grateful to have you on the panel with me today. Matt, let's just come back though to some of the things that you were starting to touch on there. There is this perception that 5G is really about distribution rather than content and production. I mean, let's really try and get granular for people out there. Like, how can producers really use 5G enabled content production opportunities, facilities, technology?
I think if we take it back, because actually from the launch of 4G, it's been used for uplink. It was never envisaged to be. In fact, I remember that I come from EE. I used to head up media and entertainment there, and a few days into the launch of 4G, one of the people that I know from Sky News phoned up, and it was one of the princes was being born, and then he said, we've got our only OB is at the palace waiting for them to put the chalk up. He said, I'm outside the hospital and can't get anything, and he said, can you get one of your devices and get someone to run it over, because it's right by our Paddington office. And that was the first live broadcast over 4G. And then we became lots of innovation around encoders and being able to bond it. But fundamentally, 4G is still a single best effort network. It's always been kind of, it should be all right. And when you can, bond lots of it, you get a little bit more. But actually, that's changing anyway now. Uplink is what we need as broadcasters. That was never really used on 4G. So, but now what we're seeing is, if you take a ground or a stadium, then what you've got is all of the people uploading huge files to social media. You have a look at cameras. So, Apple have announced that they've got Dolby Vision on their capture. Also, people doing personal broadcast. So what we're going to end up with in certain areas, dense urban environments, is that problem where we're going to lose images. So it's still used as a last resort, I guess, where you cannot get fiber and other things. So with 5G, we have the opportunity to fix that bit. We want to be able to develop networks, private networks for broadcasters and stadiums to operate, but also on the public network, the ability, and it's always been my vision that someone will sit at a portal and say, I want 100 megabits per second in this location for this amount of time with this much latency, 99.9% of availability, bang, costs this much, you swipe your credit card and it's there.
Just to add to that, Matt, I think, the remote production is again, this buzzword that we've kind of sort of very much used to now post-COVID. I think the ability to be able to get live services to our screens from more places with better quality of service and less cost than we've been at the moment is the really exciting thing, I think, particularly for linear schedules. As catch-up platforms become, perhaps de rigueur, the ability to be able to bring more live content, better quality to linear schedules is very exciting. It gives an appointment to view, and it will really, whilst linear audiences still exceed catch-up audiences, those linear schedules could use some new offer, and the live services that 5G can provide, I think, is really exciting and interesting in that space. And that's something that we're particularly looking at for how we work with our customers.
And I think, Matt, you were touching on it a bit before, again, that sort of democratization of that 5G will deliver in terms of, the power of content creation. And again, what we've seen in sort of third and fourth generation mobile technology and what consumers have done with that. I mean, holy crow, 5G provides that, springboard into, live, into multi-stranded, higher end sort of fictional content. Again, heretofore areas that haven't really been as exploited by consumer communities. So listen, I think that's a really great contribution, Matt. And Claire, I want to get back to you for a second, if that's okay, around, RedB and, again, RedB in the past, broadcast technology, distribution, et cetera. Where do you guys look at 5G and go, okay, we're seeing obviously through COVID, more and more remote production, but what are the next things that are going to happen as a result of 5G to transform these businesses?
I think in terms of the media and broadcast space, you can apply 5G across the value chain. As we talked a little bit about contribution, we talked a little bit about distribution and how IP networks will, eventually replace existing networks in that space. And certainly we are interested in looking at how we can apply those technologies as we go. I think we have to be aware of the standards process and when the 5G standards will roll out. Very exciting when we got an Apple device yesterday, but I think we feel in 5G that, it's a more of an industrial rollout. 4G was very much about the consumer, about bringing new entertainment services through the smartphone in particular to customers, whereas 5G is actually about the whole production process and much more behind the scenes, actually. And I think that's where the exciting thing is that, Internet of Things, which, the ability to be able to get computers talking to each other, being able to use AI to, monitor an episode, that is actually something that maybe the consumers might not see, but will come back to them in the way we produce content, which will hopefully be more efficient, both in terms of cost, but of course the environmental impact. 5G is a requirement of 5G is that it processes data far more efficiently. So with 5G services, the environmental impact is due to be reduced anyway, just in the way that it's produced. But also, as Matt said, you don't need to fly people around the world to do a production. There's a whole suite of other environmental benefits. So I think, it's really kind of understanding it, but it's quite a jigsaw. 5G is a different set of technologies to 3G, and 4G was iteration of that. It's going to take a while to get our head around it. The EBU produced a really good report recently, which was looking at programmating and special events. And I think a key thing was the commercial and business models that still are evolving to help us to develop services that are really appropriate. So that's the kind of legwork, it's the nitty-gritty, and Matt talked about it, the nitty-gritty about bringing these services to our industries.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right to touch on, of course, the new Apple phone, and obviously being 5G enabled, and I think again that's shown over time very strongly correlated to the take up of new technology, stands to reason, and ever richer content experiences. So again, looking at that as a big sort of catalytic moment to move that forward. Matt, I'd love to come on to you for a sec here and talk about some of the work that you've been doing to date. I mean, you in many ways are kind of ahead of the curve in terms of producing, fantastic award-winning immersive content. It'd be great for you to reach into your kind of toolkit of experiences that you've created and give us a case study, if you will.
Yes, certainly. And this is probably the most exciting thing that what I say I'm involved with, that many cleverer people than me are involved in it, but I work on it. So is the ability to be able to start to build deep immersive capabilities. We don't talk about VR in sport. VR is not really suitable for live sport. Live sport is a social thing. So you want to be, looking around, and live sport in a headset. We do 360 replays, and that's very good. But you look at them on the sort of magic window. You don't want to be sat. The whole point is we have fantastic directors and cameramen and mixers and replays. So you want to be able to see that. But actually, some people want more. So we're looking very heavily. Investing in terms of knowledge and trials augmented reality glasses. So these are the glasses that look like glasses.
Right.
So you've got sort of Magic Leap and Nreal. And what we want to do is to move towards the curator of your own experiences. So there's a couple of very good examples I can give you. So I'm sat in the room. I have my glasses on. My friend sat next to me, or potentially in another location, but virtually next to me. We're looking around. I just want a very big screen anchored in the real world to the wall, because I just like watching what our directors do and the post-production feed. My friend's a super fan. He wants to have all of the 360 videos. He wants statistics coming up there. He wants a graphical representation of the lineup as that's announced. But we still want to be able to talk to each other. So that because we've always said our ethos is taking the fan to the heart of sport. But what we want to do is to be able to move away from a one-to-many broadcast model to a one-to-one fan engagement. So we'll provide you the content and the features to be able to do that. There's one more. There's a few different ways we're looking at it. And again, I said at the stadium, so being able to put your phone up or have your glasses on, many use cases for that in terms of the features.
I mean, it is, sorry, Matt, it is the ultimate second screen, isn't it? I mean, and that you're there at the event and you have a very powerful, interactive, rich media broadcast device. I mean, how exciting is that?
Yeah, and I always say, people go, "Oh, if I'm at a stadium, I don't want to do anything. That's why I've paid to be there." Well, actually, there's always been immersive, trying to get a little better experience. My father used to take an earpiece to get the commentary to make his live experience at the stadium. So it's moving on to that. And the big thing that I always talk to stadium owners and football clubs is, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. We're providing, as a broadcaster and an operator, the ability to be able to increase your experience based on your own choices.
That's amazing. And I'm going to come back to you in a second about your roadmap for augmented and mixed reality in a second. But I do want to actually just touch back with Claire on some of the issues we were talking about before in terms of production and productivity and day to day. I mean, you brought up a very valid point about how 3 and 4G were more about consumer revolutions. 5G is as much about the consumer revolution as it is about the industry revolutions in media. So talk us through what producers, people, broadcasters working in industry today might come to expect day to day as a result of 5G.
I think there's a number of things that we can look at, and again, I think it's worth kind of keeping the whole COVID experience in our mind, because what COVID showed us was that the internet was critical. We couldn't do without it. We were teaching our children and ordering our goods and all of this kind of thing. But what we couldn't do is go to a stadium or go to a theatre. And in terms of being able to have those existing experiences, I think 5G offers a way of and I know you talked about productivity, but it's an alternative, it's a way of providing these experiences, the mixed reality work that Matt was talking about. We're hearing an awful lot about holograms. This is incredibly important for performing arts in particular, being able to provide a different form of enjoying their services, as well as music, as well as sport. We need to be able to develop these new experiences. And I think what COVID did was that we got Zoom up and running. We only got Teams as an organization in February. By March, we were like bored of it. So what's next? Yeah, we want these holograms on my table. I would like to be able to see, you guys in my room, and the work that Matt's doing, which is absolutely amazing. We'll bring this really fast. We'll see this in the next sort of 6 to 12 months. Private networks will enable that to happen on a local level. So we'll be able to see this.
Claire, sorry, just can I interrupt? Would you explain to the audience what private networks are, what 5G private networks are, please?
Well, I'm on shaking ground. Matt's a better person to explain exactly what it is. But essentially, it's like you can think of it as a local implementation of 5G.
Perfect.
And Matt, what would be the benefit to a producer or broadcaster using a 5G private network?
what it allows you to do is to be able to configure that network exactly for what you want. So we talked, and there's a question about network slicing that's come in from the audience. So maybe I can run through this. For a broadcaster, there's going to be, and we did some work with an IBC accelerator with multiple broadcasters, and it's one size doesn't fit all in terms of these networks. So you can move from a private network where you have all of the infrastructure is dedicated to that location. So you'll have your spectrum, radio, the core network. We sometimes call it network in a box, where actually you can go with a truck. At the back is an internet connection, and you're there. You direct fiber to the studio, one fiber, or internet connectivity straight to the cloud. That can be configured however you want. And when you look at some of the use cases for this, could be a stadium provided thing, or it could be, golf is a perfect example of that. You've ever seen at the Masters, the amount of cables they've got to connect up cameras and everything. The next stage comes some technologies for being able to do sort of prioritization. That's quite difficult to do because you actually need to be able to have a service wrap around it. Network slicing is a virtual, I guess, version of what we discussed with private networks. So it would be a dedicated slice, virtual network. All of the infrastructure is shared, but all of the configuration is isolated for whichever service or company. That needs a standalone network for 5G, which is a little further down the line. But there's lots of things that we can do before we get to that nirvana.
Yeah, so I think, and also the 5G in the box means that we can really start road testing these capabilities and these use cases and these immersives and holograms and all of that kind of stuff. It means that you're not necessarily going to be able to interact with it on the go because you're doing your uplink then, not necessarily the whole part of it. You haven't got a ubiquitous thing, but it means that we can do huge amounts of things and get going, and that's going to come. I think it's running a little bit late, but it's running in the next sort of 12 months that we will have those capabilities. So it's really quite close now. And I think the other thing that we're thinking at the end of the COVID is that when we were here a year ago, we were talking about people getting, the technology probably may precede the kind of culture change or the mindset to be able to use these. Now, the mindset is leapfrogged.
Right. Yeah.
We're like, bring it on. We're ready. I don't want to be talking to a screen. I want my hologram. And I think that will happen quickly.
It's very interesting you say that. We did some research back pre-COVID about immersive, interactive, smarter, some of the things that I discussed in my top hat. And to your point that maybe the technology had arrived a bit earlier even than some of the mindset shifts. It's the complete opposite of that now. We've seen the second wave of the research come through in September, and the sort of knowledge of things that heretofore were unknown to regular consumers, really what AR is, what VR could be, interactivity, and also this sort of the quality experiences. Even consumers now, not always loving just a simple Zoom call, wanting something a little bit more from that interaction, which I think is, again, obviously COVID's been a terrible time, but it's certainly really pushed things like remote production, more immersive events, and higher quality experiences to your desktop, mobile, et cetera, in much more. Go, please, Matt, step in.
No. It was just that something that mentioned there that I hadn't mentioned before is we have worked out that we may, on our remote production processes and things like that, we made years of progress in just months by necessity. And as you said, no one wants to, it's good to have something good. No one wants this and everything like that. But we always talked about remote production. Of course, that's back to the gallery in the studios. You can't sit in the gallery in the studios. So we went within literally weeks of trying to get back on air, not with live sport. We had lots of shows. And a new term came out, which was distributed production. So we had a vision mixer in one location, talent in their homes set up using a mixture of Wi-Fi and 4G. Again, that would have been, you think about the network slicing and being able to put this and dial up that amount of bandwidth, that would have been, rock solid. We were not lucky. I mean, we used lots of different technologies to overcome that, but we are actually overcoming the limitations of shared networks where they're shared with consumers.
Matt, Claire, listen, we're getting close, believe it or not, to the end of our session. So I'd love to ask the audience if you have any last minute questions. We've had a bunch of really great ones that we've interwoven into this discussion, but please throw us any final questions. But Claire, Matt, it seems to always happen at the end of one of these sessions that you're asked a really awkward question. So I'm going to ask you an awkward question, which is to get your crystal ball out and tell us, a year ago, we never would have expected COVID, obviously, and some of the impacts on things that we've been talking about, remote production, more immersive content. Where are we in a year's time? When we're back here hosting this and all the great work we've done, Claire, on the Creative Industries Working Group, what's happened? What are the big things that we'll see?
Oh gosh, I hope that the pace of change will carry on. I'm sure it will do it. Technology moves fast and people adopt it even faster. Hopefully we will run through our research projects. We'll run through the nitty-gritty work of how to make this happen. There was a lot of hype at the end of last year, and I think generally the feeling is that we need to be practical about it. We need to be realistic about what we can do and when. And I think there is, time for all of us in the industry to sort of get down and really work out the nitty-gritty of how we can make this work for our industries. It has got fantastic potential. We just need to sort of, do the work and make it happen.
Matt?
So I'll take it from, because great points there from Claire. So I'll take it from a consumer side. I'm not sure that we will have it as a full commercial offering. I think, depends where this goes globally, but I think we'll start to see full volumetric things like that suit that. Boxing, we're looking at that. We've had won some funding as part of a consortium, and we're looking at full volumetric on your table, a version of a boxing match that you can walk around, and that's really going to change. And again, it's that I could watch the boxing match like that, but my friend sat in the same room is watching something else because he doesn't particularly like that. And we will see that. And just one very quick piece on that, it's not just 5G we need to look at here. The processing power that some of these experiences need, the processing power you need to render volumetric is not going to be suitable for devices. And certainly when we're trying to make them lightweight and heat. So we're looking at how you offload that to GPUs in the cloud, where that cloud comes, where it is in the network. So it's very much, we have to bear in mind, it's not just all bandwidth and latency. There's huge processing that we need to look at where we can put that in the network.
100%. I think the sort of edge compute capability of 5G, which is still coming, is going to be, another step in this kind of 5G story. I'll leave the panel with two thoughts. Again, the release of the Apple 5G phone, again, just look back at what subsequent releases of earlier Apple products have done to drive consumer take up of new types of technologies, obviously, especially media. So super exciting what that's going to do. But yeah, I think also just some of the more data intensive capture techniques, be it volumetric capture, motion capture, but now smart stages, all of these kind of, attributes that are technical capabilities that are coming to play that, maybe even a year or two ago weren't very de rigueur, are now becoming more and more mainstream. So looking at how these types of technologies using 5G platforms become just part of the how do we create great content for audiences. Okay, guys, I think that's that. We've got to the end of our session. Thank you so much, Matt Stagg and Claire Harvey. You're both wonderful colleagues, and thank you again for joining us. And we hope all the people out there have a fantastic Broadcast Tech Fest. Thanks again, Geoff Goodwin, Verizon Media. All the best.